Hare Krishna. So we are reading from chapter 9, Sri Krishna book. Chapter is entitled as Mother Yashoda binding Lord Krishna. So I'll read and then we'll try to share something what we can learn from the past time. It's a very important book. Prabhupada has concised the pastimes of Krishna, the 10th canto in this book. And we know George Harrison, he gave money to print this book basically. So Prabhupada was not having any money, so Prabhupada was very grateful to George. Before leaving his body in Prabhupada house, Prabhupada gifted him his personal ring to George, expressing his gratitude for helping him print this book. So in the beginning of Krishna book, if you read the foreword and all, Prabhupada is writing that when people see this, while distributing this book, people see the cover of this book, they ask that who is this girl with Krishna. So so people were inquisitive to know about Krishna. Anyway, so I'll read the chapter 9. Once upon a time, seeing that her maid servants was engaged in different household duties, Mother Yashoda took charge personally of churning butter. And while she churned butter, she sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna and enjoyed thinking of her son. So as we know that Mother Yashoda is in relationship with Krishna in a Vatsalya bhav. So while doing her household work, while churning the butter, so she was churning the butter and she was singing the different glories of Krishna, different childhood pastimes of Krishna, and enjoyed thinking of her son. So this is the constitutional position of every living entity. Jivere Sarupa Hoye Krishnera Nityadas. Every living entity is by design, all of us by design are parts and parcels of Krishna. We are servants of Krishna. So it's very natural for a living entity to think of Krishna, but right now we are in a unnatural state of consciousness, because of which it becomes very difficult to think of Krishna. While chanting, we can see, how the mind runs, we are throwing one by one like gun machines of Mahamantras, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And mind is somewhere else, thinking of, everything else except Krishna. It's so unnatural to think of Krishna. It's not easy to think of Krishna. Looks like, we have got so much of truckload of garbage of this world in our consciousness. So very difficult to think of Krishna. It's not easy to think of Krishna. बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. It becomes a struggle. After a few rounds only, we give up or we feel sleepy. Some people even just after starting only a few rounds or maybe a round or two, they start becoming, completely mindless of their chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Prabhupada says while chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the most important thing is to try to hear the mantra. और कुछ नहीं करना. To focus upon hearing the mantra. So chanting Hare Krishna is also like churning the butter. It's like churning is going on. We are trying to churn, chanting the mantra and then getting some sweet memories of Krishna or pastimes of Krishna. So it's so sweet, Prabhupada is saying that she enjoyed thinking of her son. She sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna and she enjoyed thinking of her son. Generally, we think that enjoyment is independent of Krishna. We think that we will enjoy when we are, not having Krishna in our life. We are independent of Krishna. There is no Krishna, then we are happy. But here we see how Mother Yashoda, she sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna just by singing, just by thinking of Krishna. She was feeling happy, she was feeling getting enjoyment. Real enjoyment is in, thinking of Krishna, not forgetting Krishna. The biggest disease in this world is forgetfulness of Krishna. ये सबसे बड़ी बीमारी है. इसका कोई, इसलिए प्रभुपाद बोले कि we have opened a spiritual hospital to make people remember Krishna and to forget their anxieties, tensions, stress, depressions. Just by thinking of Krishna, we can resolve all the mental diseases coming in our mind. So this is so powerful. So यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं, here we see one thing, that although Mother Yashoda is doing activities, but in her heart, she's thinking of Krishna. That's how we should perform our household work. This example is given generally by Prabhupada, that how while cooking or while doing any household work, we should have some spiritual input. We should have maybe listening to the kirtans or singing the kirtans or chanting some mantras. Hearing lecture during cooking becomes sometimes difficult, unless you're very पता चला कुछ और ही बन गया cooking करते करते. It should not happen. So kirtans are better, you get spiritual vibrations going in your heart, and then we should think that we are cooking for Krishna. We are not cooking for our enjoyment. So Mother Yashoda, she was churning the butter, she was singing the different pastimes of Krishna and enjoyed thinking of Krishna. That's real enjoyment, when we get some remembrance of Krishna. Enjoyment is not in sense gratification. Sense gratification is, according to our acharyas, is like poison. Vishaya chhadiya kabe shuddh hove mana, tabe ham heri bo Shri Vrindavana. So it's like a poison, sense gratification. Those people who are deeply engaged in sense gratification cannot remember Krishna, cannot get taste in Krishna consciousness, because it's like Hathi Snan. Some time back I was giving this example, of elephant bathing. Elephant, he cleans himself so nicely in a pond, and then after he comes out of the pond, and then he puts dust on him, you know. So that's like that. Okay, some Krishna consciousness. So right now we are practicing Krishna consciousness with the uh, practicing spiritual life, but there is no, it's like a spiritual, you can say some kind of spiritual flavor is there, but actually we are absorbed in sense gratification. So sense gratification, right now we get happiness by giving enjoyment to our senses rather than giving enjoyment to Krishna's senses, rather engaging our senses in Krishna's senses, engaging our mind in Krishna's senses. That gives us enjoyment, you know. Navada Bhakti, different ways of, you know, practicing Krishna consciousness. So therefore real happiness is in making Krishna happy. So there are so many songs of our acharyas, Vaishnav songs, which we can sing and remember Krishna and get a lot of instructions also, because the songs are very instructive songs. Acharya songs are very instructive. This way we connect to that Acharya, you know, whose song we sing. We are connecting to that Acharya's mercy coming through that song. And they are like very deep, hearty realizations gifted by Krishna to the Acharyas. So when we sing these songs, so while doing our activities, basically, the lesson to learn is that while we perform our activities, we should engage not just the body but the mind also. It's not just the body is to be engaged in the seva. Activity is there, but with the activity, the heart should also be engaged. Therefore, when we chant and dance, somehow the mind get engaged, you know. Like if you do a heavy dancing, chanting and dancing, heavy dancing, the mind will be, you know, out of the place. The full energy will go in just dancing. So therefore mind has to be in the holy name. Mind has to take shelter of the holy name, no other shelter. So this is what Mother Yashoda is teaching us, that, you know, how she was enjoying thinking of Krishna, thinking of her son, you know. If there is no Krishna, then there is Maya. जहाँ कृष्ण सूर्य समान माया है अंधकार, जहाँ कृष्णा वहाँ नहीं माया अधिकार. So if our mind is empty, then it will think of lot of things, you know, except Krishna. If the mind is free, mind is empty, we don't have a proper occupation. So proper occupation leads to proper chanting. There has to be a very good balance between the occupational duty and hearing chanting. So this balance is important. That helps us to chant better, hear better, get taste in Krishna consciousness. So there has to be some occupational duty for every individual. We may have our colleges, we may have our studies, we may have our household work, we may have our job. So proper occupation, and then that helps us develop taste in hearing and chanting. So the point is that Mother Yashoda, she was the point that I wanted to make is that how if the mind is empty, mind should not be kept empty, mind should be busy. There has to be a plan for every day. A day before, we should plan our day, what all activities or services we are supposed to plan for the next day. Clear plan should be there. These are the things I want to do, and this is how I want to practice Krishna consciousness tomorrow, as per given instructions, considering the instructions, and then planning our day. So अगर mind को खाली छोड़ देंगे, if we leave our mind empty, then it will lead to all the negative thoughts. So here Mother Yashoda not only physically engaged, but also mentally also she is engaged. Mentally she is thinking of her son. So that's how our thinking should develop. Thinking goes where we have love. So we think of a person or a thing what we love. So ultimately we have to change our thinking process, thinking, feeling, willing. So she was not just free, she was doing her household occupational duties, and with that she was remembering Krishna, because this is the real solution to all the problems. But if we leave our mind empty, if we leave our mind free, then it will create a lot of problems. Therefore it is said, empty mind, devil's workshop. खाली दिमाग शैतान का घर. खाली दिमाग रहेगा तो माइंड क्या करेगा? शैतानी करेगा. It will lead to all the such thoughts that can destroy us completely, destroy our consciousness, destroy our whatever efforts we have done to practice Krishna consciousness. So therefore we should not leave our mind empty. So one should not be physically engaged, but should also be mentally also busy. Mental busyness is also important. Therefore Prabhupada has given us these books to read, lectures to hear, to chant Hare Krishna. We just not only engage our body in services, but we also engage our mind. Ultimately we increase our thinking of Krishna, we increase our love for Krishna. That's what life is meant for. Therefore Krishna book is basically talk about so many pastimes of Krishna, which we read again and again and relish and learn lessons and and remember Krishna. Any relationship to sustain requires Krishna as the central point, whether it is family relationships or brother-sister relationships, husband-wife relationships. Centrally we should be practicing Krishna consciousness together, and then only we can sustain that relationship happily. The end of her sari was tightly wrapped while she churned, and on account of her intense love for her son, milk automatically dripped from her breasts, which moved as she labored very hard, churning with two hands. The bangles and bracelets on her hands tinkled as they touched each other, and her earrings and breasts shook. There were drops of perspiration on her face, and the flower garland which was on her head scattered here and there. Before this picturesque sight, Lord Krishna appeared as a child. He felt very hungry, and to increase his mother's love, he wanted her to stop churning. He indicated that her first business was to let him suck her breast, and then she could churn butter later. So Krishna was basically, although, here a very important point comes here, a very beautiful principle comes here. Krishna is basically seeking a direct attention from Mother Yashoda, Although she is actually thinking of Krishna, she is giving attention to Krishna. How? One way she is thinking of Krishna, another is through her service she is actually with Krishna. You know, love means to serve and serve means to please. So she is trying to please Krishna. You know, recently I was hearing a principle about a devotee lives his life as Krishna desires. So Krishna act very dynamically to test us in a different way. Krishna tests us in a very dynamic way. Krishna's way of interacting with us is very dynamic. Dynamic means अभी क्या करेंगे पता नहीं है, कब क्या करेंगे, कब कैसे, how will he do what, we don't know. So Krishna acts in a very dynamic way. So here we see the dynamism in the spiritual world, where Mother Yashoda is actually engaged in service to Krishna, remembering Krishna, churning the most favorite thing for Krishna, that is butter. But now Krishna wants milk from her breast. So Krishna is actually testing here, okay, now I have personally come. So now you should stop churning and give me attention. If Mother Yashoda doesn't give attention to Krishna, then what? Krishna will be angry. So what Mother Yashoda does is she starts feeding milk to Krishna. Okay, So here she surrenders. Surrender to the will of Krishna, surrender to the dynamism of Krishna. And now you see the further. Mother Yashoda took her son on her lap and pushed the nipple of her breast into his mouth. And while Krishna was sucking the milk, she was smiling, enjoying the beauty of her child's face. But what happened? Suddenly, the milk which was on the stove began to boil over. Even in the spiritual world, everything is spiritual. Even the milk is also spiritual. So milk is also a person. Milk is not just, it's a product or something, but milk also, seeing Krishna out of happiness, milk is boiling. Boiling the milk program, basically. Prabhupada says that don't just create big numbers of devotees, but boil the milk. Milk boiling is very important. Sometimes we just create number of people, make them chant, and even we get attracted to big numbers. Like we have only 3 people in our Zoom talk. Some people have like hundreds and thousands and 10,000s and maybe I don't know how many numbers. Sometimes we think that big numbers mean something great. Oh wow, so many people came in that program and like that. Sometimes big numbers motivate us. Prabhupada says become moon and sun and moon. Don't be a star. So milk was boiling and suddenly the milk which was on the stove began to boil over. Just to stop the milk from spilling, Mother Yashoda at once put Krishna aside and went to the stove. Dynamism. Immediately the tune got changed, instruction got changed. So how you see absorption of Mother Yashoda in the earlier she was so much absorbed in thinking of Krishna. Krishna comes. Now Krishna has come and she's enjoying the beauty of Krishna. She's looking at his face, she's smiling, and suddenly, her absorption again, how much deep absorption she is in service to Krishna. She's not just अरे अभी कृष्णा के दर्शन कर रहे हैं, कृष्णा का फेस देख रहे हैं, but she's conscious that milk is boiling. That requires love to do services like this. Suddenly the milk which was on the stove began to boil over. Just to stop the milk from spilling, Mother Yashoda at once put Krishna aside and went to the stove. Left in that state by his mother, Krishna became very angry, and his lips and eyes became red in rage. कितने गुस्सा हो गए मतलब उफ. When we read the pastimes, we should also catch the feelings which Prabhupada is giving us. Like you should put yourself in state of Krishna. Krishna became so angry that his lips and eyes became red in rage. Became so angry. कितने गुस्सा हो गए मतलब आंखें लाल हो गई और lips भी red हो गए. How much angry he would have got, how much angry, so angry. इतने गुस्सा हो गए. And next, he pressed his teeth and lips, and taking up a piece of stone, he immediately broke the butter pot. He took the butter out of it, and with false tears in his eyes, he began to eat the butter in a secluded place. इतने गुस्सा हो गए भगवान. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda returned to the churning place after setting the overflowing milk pan in order. So she comes back to the place. She saw the broken pot in which the churning yogurt had been kept. Since she could not find her boy, she concluded that the broken pot was his work. She could understand that this was Krishna only. तो यहाँ पे हम we learn we see one thing, that how what she did. See, devotee does what makes Krishna happy, but here Krishna became angry. She made Krishna angry, so angry, but it's not like that, she just wanted to save the milk, but she wanted to save the milk for Krishna's service, Krishna's pleasure, So this is a loving reciprocation which is happening between the Vatsalya Bhava between Krishna and Mother Yashoda. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda, returning the churning place after setting the overflowing milk pan in order, she saw the broken pot in which the churning yogurt had been kept. Since she could not find her boy, she concluded that the broken pot was his work. She smiled as she thought, the child is very clever. She's thinking now. What she's thinking, Prabhupada is saying. After breaking the pot, he has left this place, fearing punishment. After she sought all over, she found her son sitting on a big wooden grinding motor, which was kept upside down, so she could find out, He was taking butter from a pot which was hanging from the ceiling on a swing, and he was feeding it to the monkeys. Kitna mehnat, how much hard work it takes to churn the butter, First you boil the milk and, it's a big process. Nowadays you don't get desi ghee, asli ghee, You don't get this processed kind of a ghee or butter, what she's making. So how much hard work, and she's saying in front of her eyes, he's चल खुद खा ले रहे तो अच्छा बंदरों को क्यों खिलाया. That's too much. Krishna showing his anger in such a way. ठीक है आप खा लेते कोई बात नहीं. She could have been happy, oh my son Makhan Chor taking butter, but why is feeding to the monkeys? So much anger. Rebellious soul. Child, when they become rebellious, you can't handle them. She saw Krishna looking this way and that way in fear of her because he was conscious of his naughty behavior. After seeing her son so engaged, she very silently approached him from behind. Secretly, silently approached him. Krishna, however, saw her coming towards him with a stick in her hand, and he immediately got down from the grinding motor and began to flee in fear. Mother Yashoda chased him to all corners, trying to capture the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never approached even by the meditations of great yogis. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is never caught by the yogis and speculators, was playing just like a little child for such a great devotee as Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda, however, could not easily catch the fast running child because of her thin waist and heavy body. Prabhupada is saying her waist was thin and her body was heavy. Still, she tried to follow him as fast as possible. Her hair loosened and the flowers in her hair fell to the ground. बाल खुल गए बिल्कुल. Although she was tired, she somehow reached her naughty child and captured him. When he was caught, Krishna was almost on the point of crying. Rudantam muhunetram yugmam rijantam karam bhoja yugmena satak netram muhushwas kampatrirekhaka kantha Sthita graiva damodaram bhakti badham. So, Rudantam Muhunitram, he was crying. Seeing the whipping stick in his mother's hand, he is crying and rubbing his eyes again and again with his two lotus hands. His eyes are filled with fear. Just try to, understand how Krishna is feeling. So this is Damodar-Ashtakam verse I am reading from. Rudantam hu netram yugmam rijamtam karam bhoja yugmena sataka netram muhushwasakam, and the necklace of pearls around his neck, which is marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, is shaking because of his quick breathing due to crying. To this Supreme Personality Sri Damodar, whose belly is bound not with the ropes but with his mother's pure love, I offer my obeisances. So he was crying like this. He was rubbing his eyes again and again with his 2 lotus hands, and his eyes are filled with fear. And the necklace which he was wearing, necklace of pearls around his neck, which is marked with 3 lines like a conch shell, is shaking. The necklace was shaking because of his quick breathing. The necklace was shaking. He was so fearful. He got so fearful. So much fearful. इतना डर गए भगवान, रोने लग गए, आंखें रब कर रहे हैं. Eyes are filled with fear, necklace is shaking, So much fearful he became. So, when he was caught, Krishna was almost on the point of crying. He smeared his hands over his eyes, which were anointed with black eye cosmetic. आँखों में पहले काजल लगाते थे ना, which were anointed with black eye cosmetics. The child saw his mother's face while she stood over him, and his eyes became restless from fear. Mother Yashoda could understand that Krishna was unnecessarily afraid. Prabhupada is writing. Prabhupada is giving us what Mother Yashoda is feeling. Seeing such a thing, Krishna became so fearful. And for his benefit, she wanted to allay his fears. Being the topmost well-wisher of her child, Mother Yashoda thought, if the child is too fearful of me, I don't know what will happen to him. Mother Yashoda then threw away her stick. She throws away the stick. In order to punish him, she thought to bind his hands with ropes, with some ropes. She did not know, but it was actually impossible for her to bind the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mother Yashoda was thinking that Krishna was her tiny child. She did not know that the child had no limitation. Prabhupada saying it was impossible for her to bind Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's impossible. Mother Yashoda was thinking that Krishna was her tiny. So she was in a Vatsalya Bhava as we discussed. So she did not know that child had no limitation. Just like, in the pastime of Bali Maharaj and Vaman Dev. Vaman Dev come as a dwarf and expands like anything, So Prabhupada is saying she did not know that the child had no limitation. Kab kya karenge? And similarly here, the rope will keep on expanding. There's no inside or outside of him, nor beginning or end. He is unlimited and all-pervading. Indeed, he is himself the whole cosmic manifestation. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking of Krishna as her child. Still, she was thinking, that he is my child. Although, Prabhupada is saying that child had no limitation. She did not know this. Child is limitless. Then Prabhupada is giving a statement. There's no inside or outside of him. Just like nor beginning or end. There's no beginning of Krishna. There's no end of Krishna. He is unlimited. He is all-pervading. Indeed, he is himself the whole cosmic manifestation. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking of Krishna as a child, although he is beyond the reach of all senses. He cannot be reached by our senses because senses are material, contaminated. Unless we purify our senses, we cannot see Krishna. लोग बोलते हैं हमें कृष्णा को दिखाओ, कृष्णा के दर्शन कराओ. कृष्णा के दर्शन किए हैं क्या? है ना? People say like this. निधि वन में 8 बजे के बाद में कोई अंदर नहीं रह सकता. वहाँ पे सब लोग अंधे हो जाते हैं और पागल हो जाते हैं. Different things people have conceptions of. So he is himself. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking, although he is beyond the reach of all our senses, she endeavored to bind him to wooden binding mortar. So her endeavor is to punish him through binding. But when she tried to bind him, she found that the rope she was using was too short by 2 inches. She gathered more ropes from the house and added to it, but still she found the same shortage. In this way, she connected all ropes available at home, but when the final knot was added, she saw that the rope was still 2 inches short. Mother Yashoda was smiling, but she was astonished. How was it happening? In attempting to bind her son, she became tired, perspiring, and the garland on her head fell down. Itni tired हो गई. Then Lord Krishna appreciated the hard labor of his mother. So Krishna was saying, she is laboring hard to bind him. And being compassionate upon her, he agreed to be bound up by the ropes. Krishna, playing as a human child in the house of Mother Yashoda, was performing his own selected pastimes. Of course, no one can control the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee surrenders himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee. But for his part, the devotee never forgets his position of surrender. Similarly, the Lord also feels transcendental pleasure by submitting himself to the protection of devotee. This was exemplified by Krishna's surrender unto his mother Yashoda. So Krishna sees how his devotee is trying to surrender to him. Devotee make all the hard attempts to surrender to him, to follow his words, to follow the instructions of his representatives. So devotee makes all his efforts. From devotee side, he should continue to make his efforts to serve Krishna, how hard it may be, even if we become tired and the garland of our head is falling, hard labor we are doing, and to chant Krishna's name, to follow the instructions of the Guru Parampara. So our part we should continue to do. So endeavor is our department, mercy is Krishna's department. So no one can control the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee surrenders himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee. The pure devotee surrender. He continue to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee. So sometime Lord may protect us, sometime the Lord may vanquish us, but devotee continue to do his part. But for his part, the devotee never forgets his own position of surrender. Surrender. बाल कटवाने जब जाते हैं तो बार्बर के सामने सर अंडर कर देते हैं, सर अंडर, उसको सरेंडर कर देते हैं। वैसे ही सरेंडर करना, शरणागति। मानस देहो गेहो जे किछु मोर, अर्पिलु तु आपदे Nand Kishore. So a devotee, he surrender means surrendering our will to independently enjoy of Krishna, independently and enjoy independent of Krishna. That's what we have to surrender. Surrendering our independent will. So when we talk about surrender, looks difficult. Therefore, Kali Yuga, the most merciful personality of Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya has come, who doesn't see our qualification. Krishna says, unless you surrender, I will not purify you. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam braja. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, just chant my names. accept my names. Even if you don't surrender, accept the holy name. This is the most important activity of the day you have to perform. So, devotee never forgets his own position of surrender. Very loaded statement, huh? Prabhupada is giving. Devotee never forgets his own position of surrender. That means devotee, who can be a devotee then? Is just tilak, dhoti, kurta makes you a devotee? Or one who, Prabhupada says, the devotee never forgets his own position of surrender. The position of a devotee is that he has to surrender. Krishna was being bound by Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda is trying to bind Krishna here, making all the efforts to bind Krishna. So finally, after hard work, she surrenders to Krishna's will. So same way, devotee never misses his position, forget his position. Very beautiful principle coming up. Similarly, the Lord also feels transcendental pleasure by submitting himself to the protection of devotee. This was exemplified by Krishna's surrender unto his mother Yashoda. Hare Krishna. I would like to stop here. So it's long, thoda abhi aur bacha hai, but maybe next time we can touch this. Okay. Krishna Bhagavan ki